Are we missing the boat by only focusing on carbohydrates and sugar restriction for health and longevity? What about the types of fats that we eat? For so many of us, we've been brainwashed from a very young age to believe that butter, saturated fats are bad, and vegetable oils, margarine, these types of foods are good. What if the inverse was actually true? Stay tuned to today's episode to find out more. Welcome back, my friends. My name is Sarah. I am known as Carnivore Yogi. Thank you so much for being here and clicking on today's episode. Today, I have an interview with Dr. Cate Shanahan, who is an author and has had groundbreaking research on seed oils. These oils that we've been told since we were very young are healthy, and how they're actually creating metabolic damage and issues in the body that can cause us to get sick at a relatively younger age than we were years and years ago. We really go in depth in this episode in breaking this down, and hopefully this episode can provide some education to you as well as your loved ones. I was actually at a relative's home over the holidays and saw them cooking with Smart Balance, which literally made me want to scream and jump out of my skin. But then I remembered I did this interview. And so I can hopefully use it and educate them on why they should be using butter and staying far, far away from those fake butters, right? Those are just the worst of all kind. But again, we have been brainwashed for so many years. So I hope that this episode is helpful for you. Please do share it out, send it out to your loved ones who might still be cooking with those terrible toxic seed oils that could be causing them all kinds of issues with their bodies, with their mental health, insulin resistance, premature aging. I really do hope that this helps. So again, send it out, give me a like, comment underneath this video. Let's get this out to as many people as we possibly can. I do want to thank the sponsors of today's episode. The first one is going to be Upgraded Formulas. Now, if I had to get rid of all of my supplements, I would only take this one and the next one that I'm going to talk about in a minute. But this magnesium literally is a lifesaver, helps me sleep, and magnesium is responsible for producing ATP in the body. I love the Upgraded Formulas magnesium because it is built on nanoparticle technology. So the particles are actually so small that they actually get into the cell so they can be used. So check out Upgraded Formulas. My code is YOGI12 to save on anything on their website. I'm also a huge fan of their hair tissue mineral analysis, so you can check and see if you actually need magnesium, which most of us do. I've never met a person that had adequate magnesium levels. So again, code YOGI12 over at the Upgraded Formulas website to save. The second sponsor, which is also the second supplement that I take, if I had to get rid of everything else, I would leave this one in, Grass-Fed Organ Complex from Optimal Carnivore. They also have a beef liver supplement that we take here at our home. You can use my code CARNIVORE_Y to save. There is a link in the information section for you guys. Very, very simple way to get in those nutrients that you could only get from organ meats. Very bioavailable. Your body knows what to do with it rather than an exogenous form of vitamin A and some of the other amazing things that you get from an organ meat supplement. So again, code CARNIVORE_Y to save at Optimal Carnivore. Links will all be in the information section below for you guys. And I do hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Again, as I mentioned, please leave me a comment, a like, share this video out to anyone you feel could be helped by being educated on these toxic seed oils. All right, I'll see you guys again really soon. Bye. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming back and tuning in. I am very excited about today's guest. I think it's going to be very informational, helpful for all of you. Dr. Cate Shanahan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks so much for bringing me onto your show, Sarah.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind, before we jump in, would you kind of give everyone your origin story, how you got into doing the type of work that it is that you do?
Sure. I am a family practice doctor. So I went to school for biology. Then before going to medical school, I was really fascinated with biochemistry. So I learned a lot of biochemistry, That's key to understanding nutrition.
Mm.
So I went to school at Cornell for biochemistry, and then that was all about GMO. So I was like, yeah, I don't think I like this after all. So I went to medical school. But I didn't know a thing about nutrition really, because I mean, well, actually, that's not true. We do learn a lot about nutrition.
Yeah.
I always like say that, but then I'm like, wait a second, no, we do learn a lot, but we don't call it nutrition. What we learn about is like, how does the body actually take the building blocks that we eat from our diet and turn them into a healthy cell, healthy tissues, and how does all that work together? We learn a lot. That's all part of nutrition science. So we learn a lot. But the actual dietary part that we learn is totally wrong, right? So what doctors learn in medical school is totally wrong. Of course, I had no idea about that. And I got into all of it because as a high school athlete, I kept having recurring sports injuries, and I didn't know what was causing the problem. That's why I wanted to actually be a geneticist and went to Cornell because I thought there could be some kind of genetic vaccine that I could give myself or something, I don't know. DNA was really, this was a long time ago, and DNA was like really just like the big thing at the time. But that didn't work out. So I went to medical school after that. And then I got even sicker. Like I was having very serious problems. And I couldn't even walk. I didn't know what was wrong and tried everything. The only thing that got me better was when my husband started telling me that, maybe my diet wasn't so great, because I had a huge sweet tooth, and I actually made my own syrup to put in my coffee tree because we didn't have Starbucks. I was on Hawaii, so there was no place to go for super sweet coffee. So I had to make it myself. And my husband said, that's maybe not so great. And I thought he doesn't know what he's talking about, but he actually gave me a book to start reading by another doctor. So I was like, oh, okay. Dr. Andrew Weil, I know him. Actually, yes. I went to, he came to, I'd met him because he was practicing in Tucson. He was active in Tucson. I don't know if you call it practicing. And I went to my residency there. And so I had actually met him. And so then I read the book, and in the book, he's talking about polyunsaturated fatty acids. And I'd never heard of those, didn't know what they were. He was talking about how, omega-3 and omega-6 are essential. And I was like, what? These are fats that we need. I didn't think we needed any fat.
Right.
And so I'm telling you, this was a long time ago. Right now, kindergartners probably learn about omega-3, but I had just gone through my training. And so that's where I got really interested in taking a deep dive into nutrition. And I took a hugely deep dive into it. It took years of my life, but I actually got better by changing my diet. But in the process of learning what to eat, after we learned what to eat and the power of it, I started writing a book, and my husband's a writer. So I started asking for help. And then finally we just started working on a book together, and that took 9 years, but we got it done. And it was called Deep Nutrition. So that was our first book. And it was actually like a big snooze fest, because when it first came out, because we self-published and we were on Hawaii, and there was like no social media. There was nothing to market it. So I just sold it to my patients. And, those folks who read it, they were like, this is amazing. Sorry, how did I get into it? Like, it was my own problem. Like, you probably hear this story all the time. People get into it because they needed to solve a problem. And in many cases, it's our own health problems. And then we learn, I don't know if this is, if you've heard this refrain, we learn that the official nutrition is wrong. And we're forced to kind of flop around like fish on a dock until we figure out where we're going to land. And some people land in veganism. Some people land in, keto. Some people land in whatever else, the Mediterranean diet, whatever that means. It's like the politically correct version, I think, of nutrition is Mediterranean diet. And I landed in deep nutrition, which I think is the best answer to all of it, obviously. Spent 9 years working on the thing. But yeah, so that's my answer, is we should look back to what people did in the past. And that is our best source of nutrition knowledge, is what did people used to eat? And so my husband and I did a really deep dive into that, and that became the book, Deep Nutrition.
And what was the most, I guess, fascinating thing? I know there's so many things in that book that are fascinating and noteworthy, but what was one of the most fascinating things that you discovered in writing that book about how we used to eat that is so drastically different from the way it is today?
So, well, to me, the thing that was fascinating was that it actually answered a question I'd had my whole life, which is, why am I somebody who keeps getting like recurring connective tissue injuries, whereas other people on my cross country team or whatever team, whether it was track, whatever, they didn't? Like, why me? What was wrong with me? And why were there these differences? And I found out that our food impacts our genes. That's why the subtitle of Deep Nutrition is Why Your Genes Need Traditional Food. And I found out that there's 4 basic strategies that people all over the world used to nourish their bodies and keep their genes healthy so that they could pass on functional human genes to their children. And it used to be a huge point of focus in our daily lives. And that's how we got to where we are, right? If you look at the tracking of human population, we were kind of petering along until about 10,000 years ago. Then it kind of exploded. And it was that 10,000 year ago point where it exploded, where we started cooking and sharing nutrition knowledge in the form of cooking and, written recipes and things handed down and that kind of knowledge. And that's what Deep Nutrition summarizes, is like, what is it that everybody everywhere used to do? And that explained to me, like, because my mom, our nutrition went off the deep end when my mom married my dad, who was a doctor. And, he was indoctrinated with low cholesterol, low fat, low salt, even though he never paid attention to that. And so growing up, we hardly got any protein. We got the worst kinds of fats. We took our little vitamin pill, and we thought that was the end of the story. And so, I, myself, and all of my 3 siblings, we were like, our health is a disaster compared to our parents. And then compared to my grandparents, especially like my mom's parents, who were like Russian, Jewish, my grandma, that was like indestructible. She survived COVID and she was 103. She survived, she survived the first pandemic in the 1918.
Spanish flu, right? Yeah.
Completely indestructible person. Like, why? She didn't wear glasses. I wear glasses. She didn't need any teeth pulled. She didn't have any braces. Like, that's the human experience that I wanted. And, we all deserve that. And I was deprived of it because of the fake news that passes for modern nutrition science.
Yes.
We don't pay attention to what really matters. And that's, to me, like, what is driving me to keep going with the whole thing with nutrition and the whole thing about what I call deep nutrition, which is what we really need to do to nourish our bodies and have healthy children and, go beyond just ourselves, but to be able to like look at that next future generation.
Yeah, it's, the teeth thing that you mentioned is crazy, because I did a stint as a vegan years and years ago. During the time that I was a vegan, I got cavities for the first time in my life. And speaking of the connective tissue injuries, I'm a yoga teacher. I've been teaching yoga for over a decade. And at that time when I was vegan, I kept injuring both of my shoulders, and it would go from one to the other, because I was trying to do the handstand and the chaturanga and all the, pretty hardcore athletic stuff that you do in some types of yoga. And when I was vegan, I literally could not sustain it because I was just always in some sort of pain. And as soon as I stopped doing vegan and started eating a more paleo diet, the cavities stopped, the injuries stopped. And I never put it all together until years later when I started doing what I do now with the podcasting and interviewing people and learning, like, from people like you, like your book, that these things are absolutely connected, and like you said, turning those genes on and off, right?
Yes, yes. And, so in the most vegans that I've ever met, they get a lot of their protein from powders. I don't know if that's what you were relying on.
Yep.
And I just did a piece on my website, drkate.com, about, the difficulty of getting enough protein without eating animal products. I mean, it can be done, but one of the worst sources of protein are these processed protein powders. And nobody's talking about, like, this is processed food. This is an experiment. Yes. It's an experiment. We don't know that this stuff sustains people. That's never been proven. And if you look at the impact of the processing on the biochemically on what happens to these proteins as they get separated out from the plant, and they're heated and they're pumped through pipes and they're exposed to all kinds of weird chemicals. Why is that considered food? And certainly it's kind of bizarre to me that powder that comes out of a factory that has like no taste.
Yeah.
That's considered healthy food. I mean, that's nutso. That's nutso. That goes to show you how far we've come from our roots and our connectedness to how we even got here to be a successful species on the planet. Right. And in deep nutrition, I say some pretty scary things because I believe them to be true, which is what's happening with our kids now is a disaster. Mm-hmm. And when I first wrote it, that was 15 years ago now. Mm. And it's turned out to be, I mean, tragically true. Yeah. We've got more kids than ever now with food intolerances that can barely nourish themselves. It's difficult for parents. They're picky eaters because their digestive systems don't work right. And their brains often don't work right. I mean, this is a real tragedy. We are defined as a species by our brains. And if our brains are not functioning properly, which by every measure, they're not. I mean, you look at how many special ed teachers there used to be versus how many there are.
Oh, yeah. Well, my daughter is 14 with non-speaking autism, and the kids like her, there were not children like her when I was growing up. I didn't know any. There was one kid in my whole high school with autism, one that we knew of. And navigating autism, navigating all of this over the last 14 years, there's a waiting list a mile long for anything worth a damn. I mean, for her to get proper therapies, it's like you have to beg, borrow, cheat, and steal because there's a line in front of you. And it was never like that. And, it's like, what has changed since me as a 42-year-old and now her as a 14-year-old? Like, what the heck happened, Yeah,
my sister's child also has similar issues. And it's, it's in a very simple answer. It's two things. One is we're not nourishing our children. No way. Right. Their calories are mostly empty calories from processed powders and a lot of times. But the worst of the worst is the seed oils. And so deep nutrition does two things. It talks about what do we really need to eat? What does real nutrition look like? And then the other part of it is I have a couple chapters in there is what is the worst stuff that we're doing? And I have two chapters because the worst of the worst is the seed oils, which are the soy, corn, well, the 3 C's and the three S's. So corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower. And one of the chapters in deep nutrition is brain killer. And it's called Brain Killer, Why Vegetable Oil is Your Brain's Worst Enemy. And I kind of lay it out like 7 ways that these seed oils totally destroy the human brain. And, to me, this is the biggest outrage that there is really. I mean, I'm not saying that, there's that parents did anything wrong. I'm not saying that children with autism can't be, wonderful, but I am saying that what we were told as doctors and, as consumers is healthy is a lie. It was based on a lie. The people who came up with this lie, they knew it wasn't true. And we're just all suffering because of it. And nobody like is talking about it as the outrage that it really is. We've been lied to and our children are suffering for it. Our experience of parenthood is different because of it. You know, it's not right. And and we're just kind of like rolling over and we're so busy struggling through it ourselves that it's hard to see the big picture, which is, you know, we've been lied to. And and the clarity, the purpose of that is it brings clarity, right? Yeah. If we look at where is the source of the lie, so I have a chapter about that in Deep Nutrition too, and I talk about it in my my third book, The Fat Burn Fix, as well. But the source of the lie, it's so important to know that these are people that lied to us. And it was Ancel Keys and the American Heart Association. The American Heart Association is continuing to lie to us. And so if we accept that the American Heart Association is not to be trusted, then it should bring us clarity. We shouldn't be like, well, they keep saying, the American Heart Association, they keep saying that seed oils are the healthy kind of fat, and they've got all this research and all this data. Well, why would we be believing them if we know that they are not to be trusted? They lied. They told us for years that saturated fat was the cause of heart attacks when they knew it was cigarettes at the time. They knew it. So why should we trust a single thing they say? Why do we need to have any further discussion on the topic? They are liar pants. And and we should be looking to people who understand that that was a lie to, okay, then go from there. And I think that part of the confusion that we have is now there's this huge push, of course, the moneyed interests are promoting plant-based because that is the best processed food. It's protein powder, huge profit margins. That's where the money comes from. So it's confusing for the consumer because there's a lot of propaganda around that, very clever marketing and fake news in the form of nutrition science. Yeah. And so if we are going to be not confused, we need to understand that the origin of that and that the fact that it was a lie. And so that's why I always bring this up wherever I'm talking, because people ask always after I talk somewhere, they ask me a ton of questions. Well, I'm confused because, you know, the authorities say this, and there's a lot of propaganda around plant-based and plant strong and saturated fat being unhealthy and so on. And I just have to reframe, well, if you know that the people behind all that are liars, then you really shouldn't take any of it seriously, and got to get your head wrapped around the fact that it was a lie. And once you can accept that, I think it's a lot easier to see the truth, right? If you see what the lie was, then it helps be your filter for understanding, okay, well, that's related to the lie. So I don't need to believe that either, and help me focus on the truth.
Yeah, I don't think people, and it's crazy as a, you know, Instagram or YouTube or whatever you want to call me, that I still get comments from people who actually think that Ancel Keys did good studies. I mean, there's actually still people out there who think that what he did as a researcher and what he put out there was actually legitimate. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Well, yeah, I mean, that is so important to understand that, because, you know, that's where this lie came from. That's why we're confused. That's why, you know, I mean, I'm not confused. You're not confused, but that's why there is confusion, because people are being lied to. It creates confusion. But so Ancel Keys is the father of the diet heart hypothesis. He was in thick with the American Heart Association in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, really until his death at 104, because he never listened to his own advice. And, you know, he never had seed oils. I'm sure he was always talking about how olive oil is really healthy. And yet he promoted seed oils, anyway, whatever. So Ancel Keys helped get the American Heart Association a massive amount of funding that basically caused the American Heart Association to become the success that they are today. They were just a struggling professional organization subsisting on physician dues, right? You know, just maybe the equivalent of a couple $100 a year from, you know, maybe a few thousand people. It's not that much money, not enough to do any real research. So they got a huge infusion from Procter & Gamble, the makers of hydrogenated vegetable oil Crisco, in 1948. And that was like their first big infusion of money. And with that, they've been able to do all the evil that they've done, which is all these experiments, which are really fake news, that show that polyunsaturated fatty acids, like those in, you know, Crisco, was made from hydrogenated cottonseed oil. So cottonseed oil has lots of polyunsaturated fatty acids. All the seed oils are high in polyunsaturated fatty acids. That's just the chemistry of them. And that chemistry is very important to understand if you're a health professional, but all you need to know if you're not is these are toxic.
Yeah.
And these, when we have so many of them, right, we need a tiny bit of them, but we actually get more than 10 times what we need, probably, you know, maybe 20 or 30 times what we need. And that destabilizes our whole metabolism. But so Ancel Keys didn't really understand any of that. What he understood was that he wanted to be seen as the guy who came up with the reason people were dying of heart attacks in the 1940s and 50s. And in the 1940s and 50s, you have to understand, everybody was smoking cigarettes like chimneys. So, you know, the military gave them out in their K rations. K was for Ancel Keys. Ancel Keys actually is responsible for getting an entire generation hooked on cigarettes.
Wow.
And no doubt he was getting, I'm sure he had some kind of positive kickback from the fact that he did that, right? Like he designed the K ration for the military, which is what the military was fed in World War II. And he didn't want to, so he wanted to be seen as this guy that explains heart disease to the world, this big mystery. Why are people dying of heart disease? The only problem was he was late in the game, because in the 40s and 50s, doctors were saying, oh yeah, it's cigarette smoking. People are smoking like chimneys, and it's the smokers, the heaviest smokers, who are dying, right? Back in that point in time, we had 4-pack per day smokers. I mean, I don't think anybody smokes that much anymore.
No.
But those were the people who were getting the heart attacks at the highest rates. And doctors knew this because they were the ones in the emergency rooms when people were coming in and they reeked of smoke. So doctors knew this. But so Ancel Keys, he wanted to say it wasn't that, because he just had this idea and he had a huge ego, and he basically self-engineered his own career into influence and power. He was, you know, on call basically with the doctor who was working with the president at the time. And he was an incredible social engineer. And he just convinced the entire American Heart Association to go this way, this route of like reality, and start saying it's saturated fat, and start studying the idea that it could be saturated fat. And they did the hugest study ever performed at the time, called the 7-country study. And that 7-country study showed that it was cigarettes, but they kept that quiet for 20 years. They never published anything about the link between cigarette smoking and heart attacks. That's what I mean by liar pants. They had the data. They didn't publish it. And instead, they kept saying it's saturated fat and cholesterol. And they kept just like using statistics to confuse everyone that they were presenting their information to. So if you look at the actual 7-country study, that is the most cited article when you look back at why do people still believe saturated fat causes heart attacks, it always comes back to some of these 7-country studies publications that were rolling out in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And when you look at those, there's a whole bunch of statistical mumbo jumbo in there. And it always basically the says it's saturated fat. But if you look at the data, the actual data, which nobody does, almost nobody. I mean, who would do that now? You can't find these articles very easily. The actual data shows that it was cigarette smoking, and that saturated fat had nothing to do with it.
Mm.
And that's not disputed. I mean, there's many, many people who have written books about this.
Oh yeah.
But they don't quite point it out as like, this was on purpose, and they were covering up about cigarettes. Like, that's the part that I don't think gets out there enough, because once you see it that way, it becomes more obvious that they weren't just making a mistake. They were actually didn't care about the truth, and they just wanted to keep enjoying the money from the seed oil companies. And that's what they're doing to this day. They still get money from Unilever and all the companies, Dow, that that grow the crops that are turned into seed oils.
Yeah, that's the craziest thing about nutrition science and not nutrition science, but nutrition propaganda, I guess you could call it, and what people actually really believe. That's so terrifying is they don't understand what's really going on behind the scenes. And this big push right now for plant-based. I mean, when I went vegan, and it's been 2012 was when I was vegan. I did it for 2 years straight. I was doing it because I thought it was the healthiest diet. Like, I was being told, this is the healthiest diet. This is like, you're going to start levitating. It's the pinnacle of, it's a pinnacle of health. And so that's why I did it. And of course, the first 6 months or so, I felt pretty good. But then I was malnourished. I couldn't build muscle. I had shoulder injuries. I had cavities. And it was like, it's not matching. The story's not matching up.
When people feel good on a vegan diet, it's because they're taking out the seed oils.
They're detoxing. Right? Yeah.
Well, they're taking out the seed oils. And so like, whenever anybody has any success on any diet, whatever it is, whether it's vegan or gluten-free, part of what's driving the success is that they are stopping the seed oils, because seed oils are in junk food. And when you first go on a diet, you don't eat more chips, right? Nope. You don't eat more candy bars. You don't eat more microwave popcorn. Right. You eat less.
Yep.
When you first go on a diet. And so those are some of the worst sources of seed oils, and of course, other bad stuff too. But the seed oils are the worst of the worst. They're the active toxins in your diet. Like, sugar is a passive toxin, because our bodies actually can process sugar much more effectively than they can process the seed oils, and deal with the toxicity of those two things. So sugar, your body deals with fat, and it's a kind of body fat that nature designed humans to store. Mm-hmm. But when we have seed oils and excessive calories from seed oils, we can't convert it into anything else. It stays in this unstable polyunsaturated fatty acid form that breaks down and causes oxidation and inflammation and turns into toxins and becomes, and that's why I call it an active toxin, because it, unlike sugar, sugar's addicting. It's nobody's friend. There's no nutrition in it, but our bodies can process it.
Our liver can deplete glycogen. I mean, but when we have seed oils, there's not a mechanism to deplete that, correct?
What do you mean the liver can deplete the glycogen?
Well, like, if we eat sugar, our body can metabolize that. We may, if we eat excess, can turn into body fat and be very unhealthy for us. But with seed oils, there's not really like a mechanism for us to easily deplete that, is what you're saying, right?
Right. The part of the seed oil that makes it toxic is those polyunsaturated fatty acids. And we can't do anything with those other than use them for energy. We can't convert them into some safer form for storage. And they are very reactive. They react with oxygen in literally an explosive way. It's an explosion at a molecular level. But that's what drives inflammation. When when we had people dying of COVID, young folks dying of COVID from this thing that was called cytokine storm.
Yes.
That is inflammation from seed oils going berserk in the bloodstream and causing blood clots and just massive dysfunction. That was from seed oils. And they're showing that, like, that's what that is what the research shows, is that the more seed oil was in somebody's body fat, it correlates with having this cytokine storm. They're finding, chemical fingerprints of those seed oils being associated with people who have much more severe COVID.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's not just obesity, it's the seed oil driven.
Wow. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people are just pointing to obesity, but what's behind the obesity? What's really driving the obesity? Is it the sugar, or is it the seed oils? Is it the highly processed foods? Because what seed oils are in pretty much anything you can get in a box, it seems. Whenever I read a box, or, even like the protein bars, I used to think that those were healthy. And then you read the back of like the protein bars, and it's full of seed oils, so even like the quote unquote healthy foods contain these seed oils, right?
Yeah, they're the dirty secret of the diet industry, really, is that you're still going to be eating this processed food. And so sugar and seed oils work together very well to make people extremely sick. So seed oils have no flavor, but sugar is sweet, and refined flour turns into sugar very quickly. So it gives your brain that same little energy boost. And this is what I talk about in the Fat Burn Fix, actually, how we eating seed oils makes our brain dependent on sugar. And so it causes this extreme hunger that is, an energy driven hunger, not a normal hunger at all. And that kind of hunger there's 11 symptoms of it. So for example, hangry, like being hangry, that's one of the symptoms. So many people talk about that now. That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. It was, if you're hungry, go outside and play a little bit more, and you'll be fine.
That's what I told my daughter last night. Like, you can go get energy from being outside. You don't need to eat more food. You're good. Like, you had enough. But
It's your body fat, right? That's right. Your body fat is supposed to be able to make you be able to go outside and play, and not be a cranky 2-year-old when you're 12, when you get hungry. So that's what the Fat Burn Fix is all about, is helping people identify that abnormal hunger, which it's a metabolism problem. It's not a lack of willpower that makes most people overeat, right?
I agree.
People blame themselves.
Yep.
People are blaming themselves for something that seed oils are actually causing. And that is what, like, my main point of the Fat Burn Fix is about. So deep nutrition is all about like the big picture, right? That's why it's got the word deep right in there. It's a deep story. But the Fat Burn Fix is about helping you burn your body fat, because that's the answer to obesity. Once your body fat is detoxified of all those horrible seed oils, your body fat is actually your best friend, because it's your source of energy, and it's your source of mental acuity too, because when you're running on sugar, your brain just doesn't function properly. You're always on the edge of not having enough energy for your brain, not having enough literally energy for your brain. So it's when your brain is on the verge of not having enough energy, we have all these symptoms that we call it. Like, your doctor might have even told you, oh, you're just having hypoglycemia.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was told that all the time. And my sisters, they think I'm crazy. They don't listen to my podcasts or follow anything I do. And they always have their snacks with them. And it's like, you don't need to be carrying these granola bars and Nutri-Grain bars and all these, like, they're full of the seed oils. And that's why you get so irritable and Pop-Tarts and all this crap, because that's the fuel that you're putting in your body.
Exactly. But once, Sarah, once you're healthy, you don't need it. But
Yeah.
when you still have the seed oils in your body fat,
Mm.
you actually do. So it's like people are trapped, right?
Yeah.
So your sisters can't really listen to you,
Yeah.
because if you're saying don't eat the candy bar, their body is saying, but I feel like garbage, right?
I'm gonna die. Like
I'm
literally,
sure.
I feel like it's like I'm gonna die.
Right, exactly. So the problem is that it's a metabolic problem, and that's what I talk about, how you fix it, and the fat burn fix. And it's very simple, really. The concept is you want to design meals that give you sustained energy, and that's using a balance of foods that are high in what I call healthy fats, which are mostly saturated, monounsaturated. Things like, dairy fat is great if you can take that. There's some other fats that are super healthy. And then I'm not like a zero carb doctor.
Right.
I want people to get carbs from whole foods. So like,
Yes.
beans and traditional corn tortillas and sprouted grain bread are a great source of carbohydrates that give you sustained energy. But the thing is, you need some carbohydrate, and you need to have meals that give you sustained energy. You need to know how to do that until your body fat is detoxified of the seed oils, or you're always going to be driven to snack. So I tell people, yes, I know you want to lose weight, and you will lose weight, but if you want to lose weight and keep it off this time, you have to go through this other process. You have to learn how to build meals that sustain your energy, and don't make that number on the scale. Don't look at that. You're not ready for that being your goal. What you are looking for first is getting more energy. And so that's why I have all kinds of energy trackers in the book. And I talk about how to track your energy and how to make sure that you're not feeling this kind of hunger that is the metabolic hunger.
What are some of those 11 symptoms you were talking about, besides, of course, being hangry, but how, if someone's listening, that they would know, okay, this is me? Like what is some of that checklist?
So the biggest one is being hangry and irritable.
Yep.
So that's super common, but headache is another one. Like if you're somebody who you have migraines and they're triggered by not being able to, get your meal on time or your snack on time.
Yep.
If that's often what triggers a migraine for you, then that's another example.
Okay.
Some people paradoxically get a little bit nauseated when they don't get to eat.
Yep.
And you might think, how is that?
Yep.
That's because your intestinal tract needs energy, and it's used to just getting a snack for energy. It's not used to drawing from your bloodstream. And when your intestinal tract is in distress, you perceive that as nausea. So that's another one. So I want to talk about that hunger piece for a little bit, because it was a source of confusion for somebody who read it early on, and she wrote a negative review on Amazon, and I think she scared a lot of people away. And she has a valid point if it's unclear, but it's not that. What she says on the review is that it's conflicting information, and what's really it is she just didn't quite understand it, because it wasn't. Well, she actually, honestly, I think she's not a person who ever needed to lose weight. So it wasn't like a priority for her to really dig down and understand it. But also, it can be confusing. But what I'm talking about, what I say is that you shouldn't be, if you're healthy, you almost never will you really never will feel this kind of pathologic hunger. And some people can misunderstand that and think, you're never supposed to be hungry, which is not at all what I'm saying.
Right.
It's the pathologic hunger where you have those horrible symptoms that make you feel so bad that you're just going to tear your house apart until you find the last scrap of something to boost your blood sugar.
Yeah. I've been there. I totally have been there. Yeah.
And me too. I exercised a lot. So people who exercise, cardio exercise, I ran 10 miles. We have a little bit genetically, I think, better ability to burn our body fat, but we pay for it because it damages our body. Right. So that's why I was always getting injured.
Yeah.
But I never really had that extreme hunger. I just had crazy habits and rituals and a horrible sugar addiction. Like I mentally would be not right in the head if I didn't get my daily infusion of sugar. Like I would be like, well, my day just has no meaning now.
Yeah, I get it. I would cry if I couldn't have my slice of vegan carrot cake from the health food store, which sounds like, oh, that's somewhat of a healthy, no, full of sugar. But I would literally cry if I couldn't go and get like something out of the dessert case, from the vegan dessert case, because it's vegan, so it's definitely healthy, but it was like full of sugar. I had no control over it at all. And I think a lot of people listening can relate to that, of like just having that emotional feeling around food, around sugar, around food, and I know that's how my sisters feel. That's why I try not to be too hard on them. I want to be gentle with the information, but it's literally like, you can't help it.
You can't, and you shouldn't, like, here's my thing. My thing is that I do not tell people that they can't have their candy when they want it. What I tell them is, you got to make your meal something that will sustain you, so that you have more of a choice about the candy, because you literally don't have a choice. When your blood sugar is going down, that's your brain is like in jeopardy when your blood sugar is dropping. That's why people get headaches. That's why whenever I have patients who have epilepsy, which is a seizure disorder, they almost always tell me that, it's the last time they had a seizure, it was triggered by something that had to do with their brain not getting enough energy, because they had to go for a little bit too long between meals, or they were, super busy or something like that. But that is how serious this is. And so it is so important to completely flip around the way we think about weight loss, which is, if you're overweight, you want that. Most everybody's like, I had a good week, I got the number on the scale to go down. No, we need to look beyond the scale. We need to look at the underlying cause, which is the energy. And so that's my approach with the Fat Burn Fix, is let's get you the energy that you need. Let's teach you how to make meals that sustain your energy, so that if it's 4 p.m. and you're like, I normally have a snack, I've got a little treat, you don't also feel those 11, I call them like emergency hunger symptoms. And another one's dizziness or shakiness. There's all the things that people probably, if you go to the doctor, it would sound familiar if you've ever been told you have hypoglycemia.
Yep, I have. Yep.
And the odd thing is, doctors will say that, and they will never want to check your blood sugar while you're having they'll never tell you, well, you know what, I bet your blood sugar isn't actually that low. It's that your body needs more sugar than it was designed to maintain. And that's how people get into this metabolic problem. And that's, again, I talk about that in the Fat Burn Fix, that's what drives obesity. That's what drives diabetes too. If you are having hypoglycemia symptoms, I don't care if you're normal weight, you are already on the road to obesity and diabetes, because you're going to get there. Unless you fix that metabolic problem. Your body has a need for sugar that exceeds what your body was safely designed to carry in the bloodstream. Our blood sugar level is designed to always be between like 60 and 120. And when you are getting these hypoglycemia symptoms, very often people will get these symptoms when their blood sugar is 75.
Yeah, I was going to say 80, 75.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's the normal number. That's because your body can't sustain itself anymore with that small amount of sugar. That like a blood sugar of 75 translates to about a teaspoon, 3/4 of a teaspoon, actually. Less than a teaspoon in your entire bloodstream. That's not a lot of energy in there. And that's why when you're sugar dependent, you start to feel horrible just a few hours after you've eaten, because you can't access the energy in your body fat. And that's the problem that drives obesity. It's not a lack of willpower. It's not a lack of exercise. I've had people in wheelchairs. I just got a letter from one of the reader who, he had a stroke something like 20 years ago. He's wheelchair bound. He can't exercise. And he was able to lose something like I think he said like 140 pounds so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Just by cutting out the seed oils and following your sustained energy type of diet, right?
Yes, exactly. Right. So he's not zero carb either.
Yeah.
He's just eating the healthy whole food based carbs.
And that's one thing I wanted to ask you about. So this was my experience going from standard American diet, tons of seed oils. I was like paleo, but I was eating a lot of the paleo treats, and, then I'd occasionally just go off the rails and eat whatever I wanted, but I was paleo, right? um, and I jumped directly into a carnivore diet, which, yeah, this was 3 years ago. It was really stressful on my body. It was really hard. I lost my cycle, and I still had a ton of those symptoms with my blood sugar, and feeling the dizzy, nauseous, like all of that stuff. And I've heard you say before, it takes like a couple of years before you can really get the seed oils out of your body. So do you think it's probably not the wisest thing?
Absolutely not. It's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
It's a terrible idea. I mean, no, I'm not saying shame on you. Obviously, no.
Hindsight is all, Yeah. It's better.
At least you're not adding, but here's the problem with it.
Yeah.
What you're doing is you're forcing your body to convert all that protein into sugar. You can't, your body still needed sugar. That's why you felt so bad. So what your body was doing was it was turning protein into sugar, which is a terrible thing to do. First of all, because it's just a waste, I think. It's
very metabolically inefficient, I think.
I
get killed when I say that it's bad for you to just eat a high protein diet and no carbs. People get so mad and so triggered, and I'm like, trust me. It's a shit show. It's not good for you.
Right. Yeah. Right. We're not. I mean, it's one thing when you're eating traditionally, when you're truly eating like carnivore, the way the hunter-gatherers would have done it. Yeah. They weren't overeating. First of all, they were matching their needs. Yep. And there was a lot of fat. Like there's all these stories about how,
the bone marrow,
fatten up there's fat. A healthy animal is about 20 to 30% fat, depending on, where, if it's like fattening up for the winter, it can be as much as 30% fat. Now, 30% fat is an overweight human, right? So the animals are overweight when it's our favorite time of year to hunt them. That's how much we like fat. And we would use as much of the animal to get that, as much as we could of that 30% fat. And we often would be feeding the lean stuff to dogs, right? So we really went after fat. And, a true carnivore diet is not really, I don't think it's high in protein. I think it's very much high in fat, because we would eating all the organ meats. I mean, people would eat the brain. That is 50% fat. Right? Yep. It's extremely high fat organ. So protein, like you said, to live off of protein, forces your body to process the amino acids are like all contain nitrogen, and nitrogen is explosive.
Yeah. Right? My BUN went off the charts when I got it tested, and I was like, this isn't good. It was really high, and I was like, why is that?
And people's blood pressure goes up, and research has shown that it can worsen insulin resistance, because it's not normal. People can get gout, you can get kidney stones. And I've seen all this happen when people go on crash diets that are just basically protein powders, their only source of calories. Yeah. Right. That is like another thing that, that's like the main way that weight loss doctors help their patients lose weight. And it's terrifically metabolically damaging. Yeah. I don't know a single person who was able to do that and exercise and not get injured. I've never met someone who didn't ultimately get injured or develop gout or get a kidney stone, and that would derail them from their diet. And then they would be like, gain it all back in no time. And I just saw that story happen and play out so many times that's why I decided when I was writing the Fat Burn Fix that I was going to just be the first weight loss book to say, I don't want you thinking about losing weight right away. Sure, when you stop eating your junk food, you probably will lose weight. I mean, if you're really seriously overweight, it's very easy to lose a little bit of that and start seeing some progress and feeling that positive, like, oh, this is working. But I don't want that to be your main focus. And the people who ultimately, like the people who tell me I've tried everything and nothing worked, those are the folks that are like, yeah, I'm paying attention to my energy. And yes, I actually am losing weight, but it's been a year and I only lost 35 pounds, but I'm happy with it because I feel great. This is the first time I've been on a diet and I love it. I don't feel like I'm deprived. I have more energy. And so I'm actually thinking about one specific person I was just talking with recently who, when did he start? Yeah, it was about a year, but he literally tried everything. I mean, he tried carnivore, he tried keto. He wasn't able to lose a pound until he started following the Fat Burn Fix plan. So, like this will help you no matter what.
Yeah.
But if
I get a lot of that as well, of people who have done carnivore for a couple of years and they're like, I've actually gained weight. It's not, wow. I know. Well, and I gained weight with it as well because I didn't have that sustained energy everyone talks about. Because I don't think my blood sugar was stable. I was in gluconeogenesis all the time and I would just have to keep eating more in order to not crash. So I would just eat more meat. You know, that's what they tell you in a lot of these carnivore groups as well. If you don't feel good, eat more meat. If you're not losing weight, eat more meat. Like that's like their solution to everything, which is kind of like, wow, okay. And then people listen to it and then they end up either gaining weight or not losing weight or just seeing no improvement in their health, you know?
Yeah. And here's the problem with gluconeogenesis. So that's when I was talking about how you have to turn protein into sugar. That's the term for it. It's gluconeogenesis. And what it does is it releases nitrogen, which becomes ammonia. You want to talk about toxins. Ammonia in your bloodstream makes you feel horrible. And that's what your kidney has to eliminate all that. So that's why people start having kidney issues. So I'm not a huge fan of sustained carnivore. Like if you want to do it every once in a while for like some kind of an easy detox, that's great because it's easy to understand. And if you eat nothing but animal fat and animal meat and stuff like that, you're not eating seed oils, you're not eating processed stuff. Right. You can do it for a little while, sure. But if it makes you feel bad, that's your body telling you something very important. And, the answer isn't eat more meat. The answer is do something different.
Yeah, I agree. And even you don't even really love someone to jump right into keto from standard American diet. Yes or no?
Right. Not everyone could do that. Some people can do it. Some people feel fine, but that's what actually, like in the Fat Burn Fix, I help you assess whether or not you're likely to be able to do that. I have a 16 question quiz that I walk people through. And depending on your score, it'll tell you, okay, yeah, your metabolism is healthy enough. You can probably just jump right into a keto diet. But for the majority of people I've found, anyway, who work with me or reach out to me or who are my patients, maybe they're a little more metabolically damaged than like the 18-year-old that, hasn't been that metabolically damaged. But most people really can't do keto for too long. I mean, the low carb, they like blow off the low carb flu as if it's not important.
Right.
The low carb flu is important. That's your body telling you that you're not able to burn your body fat without consequences. And we don't know what those consequences are, but they could be detrimental. And that's your body trying to tell you it's not working out right now. So maybe back off a little bit, learn what are the healthy kind of carbohydrates, learn where, how to place your meals throughout the day so that you can, they give you sustained energy. So you don't have to dip too much into your body fat. Because your body doesn't do well when you dip too much into your body fat while you still have all those polyunsaturated fatty acids stored in your body fat. They're toxic. Your body doesn't want to burn toxins for fuel, but that's what you're forcing it to do. And so that's why the Fat Burn Fix is not for somebody who wants to lose 50 pounds in 2 months. It's not that. I don't think that is a healthy thing to do. Certainly not if your metabolism is damaged and you feel bad while you're doing it. If you feel fine while you're doing it, then great, more power to you. But the Fat Burn Fix is for that person who really wants to, really learn how to fix their body and get it working, optimally, and have a sustainable way of living that nourishes your body.
Yeah. And how long, I mean, so I mentioned earlier, is it about a 2-year long thing for someone to actually get all the seed oils out of their fat tissues?
Yes, it could be. So it depends on how much you've got in there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And how much fat you have too. Right. So what you're trying to do is get it down to a lower concentration. So we're talking about a concentration of what? We're talking about the concentration of the polyunsaturated fatty acids that are in the seed oils. And a normal human body fat concentration of those things is probably somewhere around 5%, but most Americans walking around are closer to 20 or 30%. And you start to feel bad somewhere between that 5 and that 30%. And everybody's different. But when you can sustain off your body fat, you have to be less than, probably less than 30% and maybe less than 20%, but it may take a year to get there, and it may take longer. So that's why it doesn't mean you can't lose weight,
right?
Before then. It means that it's going to be a little bit slower, right? Your weight loss to be healthy, should be a little bit slower. When you can really accelerate weight loss is, after maybe 4 years of following a plan. The people who have success, I mean, I know somebody listening, if you're like, oh my God, she's saying 4 years, what? This is crazy. I'm never going to do this. But the people who have I'm talking about people who have they're 300 pounds, right? So that they've been overweight for, many, many years. That's what I'm talking about, is you didn't get here overnight. So you're going to want to plan your trip. Right.
Yeah.
And they make it that's why it's so great to make it about having more energy instead of less weight, so that you can see those positive changes happening before you've even lost an ounce. Although, like I keep saying, most people do lose weight. You can lose, if you're 300 pounds, you stop snacking, you're going to lose a good amount of weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think people are in so much of a hurry, but I've never seen anyone that loses a bunch of weight really, really quickly actually keep it off and create a lifestyle out of it, because I don't think you really learn how to build and sustain a healthy lifestyle if you just, I call it winning the lottery, right? Like, how many people that win the lottery ever keep their money? Most people just burn right through it, and then you're back to broke again, because you've never understood how to manage that money, right? And I think weight loss is kind of falls into the same camp.
Yeah, I mean, this traditional weight loss doesn't teach you anything about your body, and and what I would like to do is teach people to have a relationship with how they feel. Right. So I teach you to have a new relationship with your body, and so that your body is your friend, because your body fat actually is there to give you energy, and food is your friend. It's not your enemy. It's there to give you it. If you choose right, it can help you have energy. So it's a total mindset shift from the typical diet, which is your body's your enemy. It's your problem.
Right.
You got to eat less. Food is your enemy. Everything's your enemy. It's all about restricting. And I think that's not healthy.
Yeah. And I mean, how do you feel about people who are calorie counting, macro counting? Do you think that's a helpful thing to do, or just not helpful at all, especially the way that you have them do it?
Yeah. I mean, it can be a useful tool, right? There's a lot of things that people can do that you want to understand when they're going to be useful for you. So calorie counting usually is not necessary until you get, if you're following the Fat Burn Fix, I don't even talk very much about calories. And I say, once you get to the point where you're not having any of these 11 emergency hunger symptoms, then here's what you do. You stop eating lunch, or you skip a meal. so that you are forcing your body to dip more into your body fat. That's how you're going to lose body fat. So you don't have to count calories to do that. But I mean, you can, right? Like, so if people are doing that and they're still not losing weight, that's where I'm like, okay, well, now we need to get granular and figure out what's happening here. And it always boils down to, oh, I was having 200 calories of cream in my coffee that I didn't think counted as a snack, right?
Right.
I was having that 4 times a day. Oops.
Oh,
right.
wow.
So
Yeah.
that's where calories can help you get real. Like if you don't realize how they're slipping into your drinks.
Yeah, I agree that's, a lot of people are doing that. And when they go on to like, especially a high fat diet, I find people sometimes are not satiated because they're not getting the, I guess, the feeling of volume. And then they're just not efficient at burning their own body fat as well.
Yeah. So very often you're right. They're not satiated if they're used to having that like feeling of a bloated stomach because especially if they're getting rid of the seed oils, you don't have as much bloating.
Yep. Exactly.
So it depends what your hunger cues were. And yeah, so like, and your satiety cues too. So that's where it's really important to have a conversation about, okay, well, how can we kind of help you get that satiety cue? And that's one of the things that, that I do when I work with people one-on-one. And one of these days when I get my course put together for experts like yourself, I can put it all in a system to help you work with people who need the help. And one of the things that I have people do, just a quick little tip on that, if you haven't tried this already, is if you've eaten but you don't feel that satiety after your meal, give it 5 minutes, get up, walk around and do something that involves bending over, because you're going to get that pressure on your belly, right? And that's going to start triggering the correct chemicals to go. When your belly is full like that, it actually sends signals to your chemical signals to your brain and gives you a like, okay, stop it already. There's enough in here. So that's just like one little trick that can help those people in that boat that you just mentioned, where they're gaining weight on a high fat diet because they don't have the fullness and they're used to those fullness cues. So there's a lot of little tricks that, that can be helpful for folks that I actually mentioned a lot of them in the Fat Burn Fix. So, there's a lot in there, but there's a lot of science in there too. And so it's really for that person who can learn on their own, or, for an expert like yourself to be able to help people walk through a process that has some structure to it. That's what I was hoping it would do for everybody.
Yeah, I think that is really helpful, because a lot of people I feel like they are so confused with the amount of information that's out there. And they are just, if I just eat quote unquote healthy foods, then I'll lose weight. Like I had a conversation with a friend of mine who has a child that's struggling with their weight. And she said, oh, I'm giving my child all healthy foods. I mean, we're eating lots of oatmeal and fruit. And I'm just like, oh gosh, that's what you're giving them for breakfast, oatmeal and fruit. And that's just a horrible way for that poor child to start the day. There's no fat, there's no protein. It's really confusing for people, because like we talked about in the very beginning, there's this agenda by the American Heart Association out there to have people subsiding on these types of foods.
Processed high profit margin foods.
Exactly.
That's what they want you eating. They want your children eating that. And then the next phase is get some kind of chronic disease so that you can take a drug every day. That's sad, but that's, that's kind of how people are making money in this world right now. That's just the reality.
Well, it is. I mean, I am not fully carnivore now. I do eat a heavy meat-based and fat-based diet. I eat tons of butter and, stick to the healthy fats, butter. I do eat some avocado, tallow, ghee, all of those things. That's my staples right there. But before I just, I didn't I thought those were bad for me. I just always thought that those were the worst things you could possibly eat. And I was scared of them. And I think most people are.
Yeah, exactly. I know it's really ingrained because we hear it so often, and it seems to make a little bit of sense, if
Yeah.
you think about, if you don't really know what people used to do, right? I think
Right.
that's part of the problem, is that our traditions and our deep, like, abiding faith in your mom or somebody telling you what to eat, that's been ripped away from us because we were all, when you take away saturated fat, you take away all traditional cuisines. So
Yep.
there is no culinary tradition that can survive that. And so that's they got us right where they want us, where we're all confused and we're just going to go for the latest supplement or the latest, just cut out this one thing or just eat only this one type of thing or whatever. And
Yeah.
it keeps the whole machine going. It
Yeah.
doesn't make anyone healthy.
It doesn't. And, eating the way that I have been for the last 3 years, I'm on 0 medications for the first time in my adult life. I mean, I think I was on my first medication at 14 for ADHD and, couldn't pay attention in school and was getting bad grades and had depression. So it's like, let's do a SSRI and a Ritalin, and that's going to help her get through high school. And that was the beginning for me of medications, and not once was it, well, maybe she should stop eating SnackWells, because I grew up in the 90s and we had, all the fat-free stuff in the SnackWells and all the junk. That was never mentioned. It was just like, let's just pass to the pills immediately. And that's still very much the case today. I haven't been on an antidepressant in years, thank God, and no sleeping pills or anything like that. And the thing is, I don't need them. I feel like a lot of people are just, it's kind of, they get to this point where it's life or death. They just become so mentally disturbed almost that it's like, I have to take this or I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, it is. And that's the brain not getting enough energy. Like, I think most mental disease that people suffer from now is driven hugely by depriving your brain of energy. Not all of it, obviously, but little patches of it from time to time are just not getting enough, because it's when you're subsisting on blood sugar and your brain is designed to have access to something called ketones, which are much more efficient fuel. You can't give the whole system the energy that it's like a grid being overloaded. You're having brownouts. That's what drives a lot of our mood disorders, our anxiety disorders, certainly, and what they call mental illness, when it's really just a lack of brain energy. I mean, I'm not saying there isn't such a thing as mental illness, but I'm saying, like, probably you could eliminate 90% of it by by getting people on a healthier diet.
I agree. Yeah. And in our population, it's just the easier thing to do to take a pill. And it's like, I get a lot of I don't know if you do, I'm sure you do, but I get a ton of pushback when I talk about doing something that's like free and natural.
Yeah.
Versus taking a pill or supplement or a medication. It's really just, it's hard.
It is hard because it's not like you just have an easy solution, like, oh, just take this supplement that I happen to sell or have. And
right.
P.S. I make $30 a bottle and you're going to be on a subscription for it from my website every month. So
yeah. I've been talking lately about just the power of nature and watching sunrise every day and being outside and putting your feet in the grass. And it's like, I've just talked about, kidnapping or something. It's like people are so resistant to doing those things. Well, what else can I do instead of watching the sunrise? What else can I do instead of going outside and putting my feet in the grass? I'm like, why would you not want to try that? It's free. It's how we evolved, like you were talking about with food. The other part of that is we evolved outdoors. We evolved under the sun, and we've taken our food away. We've taken that connection to nature away, and we wonder why we're all so sick and dependent on these medications now.
Yeah, exactly. I know. And it's hard to, like, do something that sounds probably like Greek to some people, you know, especially if you're living in an area where there isn't grass.
Yes, that's
Right?
the hardest thing for people is like, well, I don't have grass where I live. And I'm like,
Yeah.
well,
That's really hard. It's not a great situation, you know,
mm-mm.
because there's not an easy answer, because I don't think people can be totally mentally stable if they're completely cut off from nature. You know, I mean, does a video game do it for you? I don't know. I think that's why people go to video games, because they're so visually attractive, and we need that. That's what nature is. It's visually
Right.
beautiful stimulus that's like
Yeah.
settles you down, you know?
It does. It's amazing. I mean, we've changed our family dynamic and we go hiking and we are just yesterday, it was just the most beautiful fall day and the light was shining perfectly and the leaves were like this yellow and it was just like, it was 4 p.m. The sun was kind of starting to go and it was like, we just kept stopping. We were like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And yeah, that's natural. Just like our food, it's delicious, it's satisfying, but we're so cut off from what's real, what we evolved doing.
Right, right. I know. Yes. So just understanding that, like, if you have an addiction to video games, well, it's not something wrong with you. It's that probably, I'm guessing, you don't live in the middle of a national park like land. You
Right.
probably don't have access to really anything particularly beautiful to look at. So maybe that's why you do that. But I like to frame it up as like it's an explanation. It's also the answer, but until you can do it, it's at least an explanation, so you can know what you're aiming for, right? You know why you're doing something.
Absolutely.
You know, it's
Absolutely.
very often, it's not that there's something wrong with you, it's that the environment we live in isn't the environment that makes us healthy anymore. So it's important to understand, what is it about it that's unhealthy and how do we aim for that?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I feel like I could just keep talking to you for at least another hour, but I try to keep my podcast around this time. And, any final thoughts or any closing thoughts where we're talking about, just this getting back to nature, natural food, the seed oils, any closing thoughts at all?
The last thing I just want to say is that, you know, if you've been struggling and you're frustrated with your results, there's so much of it that is, you've been set up. So
Mm,
don't blame yourself, right?
mm,
Like, just take yourself off the hook, because, like we just said, the environment is not a healthy environment. And so, you know, in the Fat Burn Fix, and when I work with people and on my website, I talk about why you've been set up,
mm.
and like more about, like, don't blame yourself, because self-blame is self-destruction. And like, the last thing I want people to do is feel frustrated that, oh, I can't do any of this because X.
Yeah.
There's always a way to get started, and the first way just might be, hey, it's not been your fault.
Right.
It's not that you lack willpower. It's not that you're a lazy person. It's, you've been set up.
Mm,
So, so let yourself off the hook. And, you know, if that's your first step, take it and celebrate it once you've done it.
yeah. Absolutely. I love that. That's a wonderful thought to leave people with. And where can people find you if they want to work with you and just follow your work? What's the best way to do that?
My website is drcate.com. So it's drcate.com. And yeah, so I have a limited practice, but you can make appointments with me. I try to get most of the information out on my website or in my books and on podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome. We appreciate it because I've learned so much from just listening to you on other podcasts. It's like a fun thing to do just to type your name in on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube. You've put out amazing, amazing information. So if this is your first time listening to Dr. Kate, then please do explore the rest of her work. She's done a ton. So thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Awesome.
been great chatting with you.
Yeah. Awesome chatting with you. Thank you so much.